Today we're going to learn a technique in Photoshop called color isolation. And what I've done is I've gone to Google and searched for the term color isolation to find some examples. And as you can see, what it really means is taking an image, making it black and white, except for a few areas that you isolate that retain their color. And there are a lot of good examples if you just do a simple Google search. We're going to find an image and we're going to leave three things at least in color while keeping the rest of the image in black and white. The first thing we need to do is find a picture to color isolate. We can't just search for color isolation because these have already been worked on. And some images will work better than others. If you look down the list and do a search yourself, you'll see that certain things sort of get isolated more often than others. For example, I see a lot of images that have flowers in them. So I could go ahead and just search for images of flowers. Some images will work better than others, and what we really need to have, we need to have images that are high resolution. We need to have images where what we want to keep isolated is distinct from the background, because we're going to have to use the selection tools that we've already gotten pretty good at to actually isolate the part of the image that we want to retain the color on. The other thing that you really need to do is go to Search Tools, go to Size, and say Large. This will ensure that the images that you choose will be high resolution. So you can conduct your own search. You can search for things like flowers, cities, models, whatever you'd like. Make sure you change it to a large picture. You could even search for things like color. Now some of these will work great. These colored pencils would be easy to work on because the tips are very distinct from each other, and selecting them would not be too much of an issue. Something like this image, however, where the colors blend gradually from one to the other, that's going to be much more difficult, and I wouldn't recommend you try something like that. But there are really lots of different images that you could find that will work for this project. Keep in mind that you need to separate at least three things that are separate from each other. So you could pick this image, for example, and choose three of the different colored pencils. If we move back to the general color isolation images that we saw before, a lot of them have only isolated one thing, like the one butterfly, or the Diet Coke can, or this one woman in the crowd. That's not what we're looking for. We want to have at least three things. So if you were to use this image, for example, you would need to keep her in color and at least two other people. If you wanted to use this image, you'd have to have the butterfly and at least two other things on the image. So we're doing more than just one. That way we can practice the technique. I think I want to use this image right here of the woman with a bunch of colorful umbrellas above her head. So in order to acquire this picture, and I can hover over it and see that it's a very large picture, 4889 by 2560 is very large. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the image to make it large, the full size I can get. This is a necessary step. Do not try and save the thumbnail directly. You'll end up with a very small thumbnail sized image, which will not work. So click on it. If possible, click on View Image. Like I said, this will give us the biggest possible image to work with. And I'm going to go ahead and right click and do Save Image As. I'm going to go ahead and put it on the desktop for now, but you should put it wherever you know you'll be able to find it. Maybe in the Documents, Downloads, or Pictures folder. And I'm going to call it Umbrella Color Isolation. And save. If you're using Chrome, it'll pop up down here, which is fine. I'm going to go ahead and click this little down arrow. Tell it to show me in folder, and there it is. And now I can right click on it. Actually, sorry, there it is. And then I can right click on it and say open with Adobe Photoshop. You could always just open up Photoshop manually, go to File, Open, and open up the picture that way. The key to making this process work right is by having the right layers and by not getting confused by them. So we're going to have several layers before we even get started. Right now we have the normal background layer, which is locked. I'm going to make a copy of that layer by clicking and dragging it down onto the New Layer button, which will create a copy. And I'm going to do that several more times. I'm going to have one layer for each of the objects that are going to be isolated. So that's three copies. I'm going to have one that's going to be my black and white copy. And I'm going to make one more just for good measure. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to rename these layers so that they make sense. I'm going to right click on their name. This one I'm going to call black and white. This one I'm going to call do not delete. And this one I'm going to say is umbrella 1, umbrella 2, and umbrella 3. You should obviously name these layers based on the things in your own scene. And if I were going to be more specific, I should probably give them names like blue umbrella, pink umbrella, yellow umbrella. But this will work for now. Now the next step is take my black and white layer, which I actually moved above my do not delete layer, and actually turn it black and white. There are several ways we could do this, but the best way would be to add what's called an adjustment layer. You can see these up here. So I have my black and white layer selected, and the black and white adjustment is right here. It's the one that has black and white in the icon. I'm going to click on that, and you'll see it's added this to the layer. And you're probably thinking to yourself, well, it didn't work. The image is definitely still in color. True, because we still have these 3 layers above it that are in color, that are visible. So I'm going to go ahead and make them invisible for now. And now we can see that our black and white layer is actually black and white. As part of the adjustment layer, I have some sliders here where I can use these sliders to tell the image how it should treat certain colors as it makes the transformation from black to white. So you can play with those sliders to get the kind of image you want to have. The good thing about adjustment layers is that later on, if I don't like them, I can come back and I can change these sliders, or I can get rid of the adjustment layer altogether. I haven't permanently changed the image itself. This black and white adjustment layer is basically just sitting on top of the normal picture. Now it's time to get down to the actual process of isolating colors. So I'm going to go to my first umbrella layer, umbrella 1, and I'm going to make it visible again, which of course is going to make the entire image have color once more. And now I'm going to pick an umbrella. I'm going to start with this pink one right here, and I'm going to find a way to get it selected. This will of course depend on your actual image. I typically start with the quick select or magic wand, but remember you also have the magnetic lasso tool, and we also have used the quick mask tool in the past. So since we're using color here, let's try the magic wand tool first. See, that's probably not going to work for us, because what it's doing is it's looking for this shade of pink and it's finding it all over the image. What I really want is just this one umbrella itself. So I'm going to deselect that, and I'm going to go and try the quick select tool. And you see this is going to work much better. This goes back to when I was looking for an image, and I told you it's really easy if you find an image that has discrete colors. So Photoshop does not have a hard time at all distinguishing between the pink here and the white over here, or the pink here and the green here. So the quick select tool has a very easy job picking out that pink umbrella. Of course, it's up to you to choose the right selection tool for what you need. At this point, I'm going to go up to my refine edge tool. I'd say one more thing. I'm going to cancel that. Make sure that you have the actual umbrella 1 layer selected and not the layer down here, the black and white layer. It's very important. Click refine edge, and it's going to show me what I have selected. I'm going to smooth it if I'd like, add some contrast if I'd like. You could do that at your own discretion. The important thing though is the output, and what I'm going to say is output to a layer mask, and I'm going to press OK. And there we are. So what's happened here is I have this full color picture sitting on top of the black and white image. But then I added this thing over here called the layer mask. And if you look at the thumbnail of it, I have this circle of white surrounded by black. And what a layer mask does is it allows us to only see the part of the image where there's this white part, which is the selection, which was the umbrella. So only the color of the umbrella is shining through on top of the black and white image. I'll go through the process one more time. I'm going to click on my umbrella 2 layer to get it selected and make it visible. And I think this time I will choose this blue umbrella over here. Let's keep with the quick mask tool, the quick select tool. And once again, that's going to work really well for me. Once I have it with a good selection, I'm going to go to refine edge. I'll smooth it a bit, add a little bit of contrast, and I will output it to a layer mask. And it's that simple. Now, on top of my black and white image, I have a layer that's letting just this little speck of white here, where the pink umbrella is, through. On top of that, I have a full color layer that's only letting the color of the blue umbrella right over here through. And now, of course, I go up, repeat the process a third time, and I'll have three images, or three parts of the image in color. I went ahead and finished it off by adding this red umbrella over here. Make sure that your image has three things that are in color. The rest of the image should be black and white. You could, of course, do more things in color, but three is the minimum. When you are finished, you should save it two ways. First, you should save it as a Photoshop file, as a .psd file. That's so that you could always open it back up and you'd have these layers and you could continue to work on the image if you wanted to. Who knows, we might actually open this back up later down the road to do more things to it. But to turn it in, you should save it as either a JPEG file or a PNG file. Either one will work. What that does is it takes all these layers, it flattens them into one single picture, makes it much smaller in terms of the file size, and it could be opened from any computer or phone. The Photoshop file, on the other hand, could only be opened up by Photoshop or a computer that had Photoshop, and when it did, it would be all these layers.